talking to the director, trying to see the characters, get to know them, and how they would act and behave throughout the movie, because many of them have like a spin within the story that changes them, and so basically we need to handle that a little bit. This is another one. It's like the same reaction by all three, but you can see what the personality is for each of them. So it's the same action, but with different reactions from each of them. So we researched with that. We talked to the director. We found a way to do it more, or to differentiate them and make them unique. In addition to these three at the Metegol team, we also have all the other players. There's 11 of them. So it's like a real soccer team. And each of the characters, even though they're not protagonic or main characters in the story, they also have a treatment or a search for personality that's very interesting. There's a line, the line of the five in the middle of the court. They're all players which look like almost an international soccer team. We have a guy from the Caribbean, a Russian guy, a Korean guy. We have somebody from the province of Córdoba, which has a very characteristic singing to them when they speak. So we try to pay a lot of attention to the characters mainly. This was research regarding the characters, and there were some very specific things. For example, in the design of the human character for Amadeus, for example, is a very large body and stick almost, which is thin. And well, we needed to find a way to how to articulate them or how to move them. I'm gonna show you something that wasn't used in the end, but it's very curious how far we've gotten to research the characters' movement. So there it is. This is one of our storyboard artists trying to balance a broom. But okay, the proportions in Amadeus' proportions, this was done by Fede, our animation director, and he realized that it was very similar to a broom turned around, and that's when he decided to try this out, which in the end really didn't take us very far, but it was something that meant finding somewhere unexpected on how to turn or give a turn or twist to the characters. But even though it didn't help us at all, but it's good to know or show it to see the opportunities that we had, to know what things we had at our disposal, and well, our budget was enough for a broom, so luckily enough we could buy it. We were able to use it. Okay, I wanted to show you a little bit. Maybe I can open this one. This is the design for the Amadeus character. Well, if you can see, the proportions are very similar to the broom that you just saw. And David Masagnik is the actor that gave his voice to the character. I mean, for the characters, we always built a document where it showed all the features and characteristics of the character in order to then facilitate our task to communicate to all animators how it moves, how they move, or how the character moves actually, and what we need to take into account for the character, and maybe the growth that the character is having as part of the story. So I wanted to show a little bit of the whole design behind Amadeo. I wanted to show you a little bit about how we work with the studio, with the software. The main software was Maya, and there was another type of software that was used for visual effects or for modeling. The characteristic was 3D Max, but our main tool to animate was Maya. And all the tools, everything that was used and developed. We also had a tool department where with people working on the pipeline, and this is also something that in Argentina we managed to, for the first time, work in such a way that we were oriented towards a pipeline or a very organized work structure divided by departments. And well, I think there was no other way to face a project of these characteristics. We needed to make it in such an organized fashion. But the kids from the pipeline, there was a part that was tool development, and they would provide us with the tools that we needed, and they did it also jointly with other departments. And I wanted to show you what happened. Mac. Okay, let's go back. Well, this is a screenshot or snapshot, maybe. There you go. There. We can move it forward. But this is a snapshot of what was of our interface and how we work with our characters within the movie. Has a significant amount of characters. I don't know the exact number, but there were many of them, and not just extras, but characters who would contribute to the movie, and they had to be in this part, and as well at the same time as the main characters. They had to be on screen at the same time. So we had an average of 4 characters per site or per scene, and it wasn't just about animating one characters. We had to animate many, in many cases, in many scenes. And this is not a camera. It's not the final camera, but it's a working camera. And as you can see, well, there you have the character, the rigging, the controls. This was all what favored the design of the characters, that they were all very similar, and basically we were working with the same grid or rim or rig, sorry. And even though it was quite simple, the rig, it had approximately 260 controls all in all, and but it was still very simple if you count the joints of the fingers and the face. I mean, the captain was the simplest of all, but having all the characters with the same structure, the same rigging, the same controls, we had the possibility also of changing animations or moving the animation from one character to the next. The voices could also be changed. We didn't use it a lot because since all characters are very different, but the actions, but in, for example, generic actions, we could use them. We could save a lot of time with other characters using that possibility of copying actions from one to the other. And what I was telling you about the tools is that all of these icons that you see up here are the tools that were developed within the studio for the animation department. All the other departments had their own shelves or their sections with their tools in each or for each area. And the tool that helped us a lot, sorry, is this one that you're seeing here, which we call it Picker, and it's an interface developed to facilitate the selection of the controls of all the different parts of the characters. As you can see, they have a sort of a shape of the character, the controls for the hands. We have here, this part is the spine, the back, arms. You have the possibility or the chance to pick the IK or FK chains. So this tool was, we couldn't animate again if we didn't have something similar to that. I mean, it was really quick. We were able to select the controls with just one click. It was a lot more comfortable. And also working on the camera, that would be the final animation camera, which is the one that we're seeing now. And as part of that same interface, we have this mask also, which is a mask that has the face controls. So by moving those controls, we could also control the facial gestures of each of the segments of the characters' gestures. We could control it from there. It was key also, the issue of handling the gestures and the face movements of the characters, to keep this idea of always keeping them differentiated. Even for each character, when we caught, or we grabbed an acid or a rig animation, they all come with the same face, the same pose. And so we had, one of the tools that we had was a a pose archive, where we would store all the characteristic faces of each of the characters, and that's how we were able to start with a base that was more character oriented rather than a generic one. So this was sort of what was the development of tools directed towards animation, because of course then we had, in the development of the pipeline, it also involved the work by a lot of people and development, lots of development for the other departments too. So, well, we have an example on how it's changing, and I also wanted to show you a little bit of how we took that process, the animation process. In this way of working with the pipeline, we had a very organized way to work and receive the material. Many animators, especially Argentinians, were not so used to getting a storyboard and then a layout. Until now in Argentina, well, until then actually in Argentina, everything was being done in a disorganized fashion, trusting on generalist people, which is what usually happens, and it's that somebody comes in to do 3D, they come in to animate, they do renders, they do rigging. It's very hard to do specialization and then start to work specifically on that. In Metegol, we had this profile, very, very specific profiles, and somehow we sought how that could be done in that way. But what we were telling you about, or what I was telling you about, before we started with a plan or a scene, we went through a series of stages. We began with the reader, the layout, and the layout was like the models of the characters. It was very basic ones, no expressions, no deformations, nothing. But with the 3D camera movements and the storyboard, what it would give us a lot of was what the plan wanted to, or the scene wanted to convey, because since they were drawings, the gestures were very, very clear, and when you looked at the storyboard, you can get an idea of what the character wants to tell, which the layout wouldn't give us. So we would bring up the two together, and then we'd see what would come out of it. They don't listen to me. They don't listen to me all week preparing a game, and Well, this is a story of a very short scene, or a very short take actually, but you can see that the captain's expressions are very well framed there and marked and displayed. This is part of a soccer game that was just what happens in the movie, and the players are in on the bench trying to encourage the team, Amadeo's team, which is the town's team, which is the one that gets formed there. And the idea behind this, having the story on the layout, before we animated a sequence, we had a briefing directly with the director, with Juan Jose Campanello. And in that briefing, we saw the whole sequence that was going to be distributed along the different groups of animators, and he would tell us what the scene was about and what was the tone that we had to give it to it, if we wanted to tell a joke in it or not, how much we wanted to animate. That is also another characteristic that we animators thought was very interesting, at least in my case, of making a movie directed by a movie director with real actors. When we had the briefing with them and the reviews of the dailies, with the animated blueprints and all the plans and the takes, one was always directing us as if we were actors. I mean, we didn't have that thing of, hey, move the arm a little bit more, or in this frame pull it back a little bit. No. In reality, what he did was to tell us and convey to us the idea that he had and what the character had to convey. So what we had when an animator began, there was a whole range of possibilities, a very large one. But anyways, after, with the use of references and investigation and research of the character, that is limited a little bit. This is the animatic that was done based on the storyboard, and as you can see, the expressions were very well displayed there, and you can see in the layout there's a huge difference there. They don't listen to me. Look at this, all week long preparing a game, and look at this. This is also a layout that's done very quickly, because we also had to get the take sent to animation. So it held on to the idea that the director had, which is that the character was actually acting as if they're a technical director, complaining about his team. That was the main idea. So what he was seeking there was for the character to walk back a little bit, and push his colleagues and team members, and always acting that way. So this take that I was tasked with animating, I got the idea of finding references from precisely soccer coaches in real matches, and in YouTube there's a huge amount of material. There's even a show which is on TV, but it's moved to TV, or from TV to YouTube, sorry, and it's called The Show of the DTs, of soccer coaches. There was a compilation of reactions by coaches complaining and insulting their team and insulting the technical team behind them, and this was something a lot of fun. So in this case, as an animator, I usually don't videotape myself as a reference, not usually, because it really is not what I want. I mean, I have to find other alternatives, and usually what I do is either draw sketches or external references that are suitable and that will go to the point of the take. So I'm going to show you. These were the references that they don't listen to me. They don't listen to me. Come on. Sorry. This is it. Okay, you can see it. Okay, there I sort of built up on all the references that inspired me. They're really funny, and there's a lot to get out of that. And as you can see, it's a very building. That was Maradona there. and we're not even listening to them. You can't even hear what they're saying, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's huge. And of course the celebration. But what happens is that, well, you see a compilation, a very broad compilation of references, but the take is really short, and I'm going to show you in a minute. But what was good for me, looking for references, was exactly that. I mean, it's looking everywhere and trying to make a short interpretation of that, looking and seeing what is best, what can work, what can't work. So that helped me a lot to see it over and over again, analyzing the coaches. So I'm going to now show you a first vlogging of the take. This was an initial idea, initial proposal that I did to the director, and he liked it, but there were things that were still missing, and what he told me in this case was that I should try to leverage on all of the depth that the take had. I mean, the character should go a little bit further back. Okay. You can see at a point, there's a point where the captain goes to Beto. He walks in, but he doesn't touch it. He doesn't touch him, actually. He doesn't go all the way back. And what the director wanted was for us to get the most out of that depth of the perspective. And this is also a take that I was telling you about, that you're going to see the second block where more characters are added, so you need to animate all of them. But the main ones were these three. I'm going to show you the second alternative. That was the proposal, the final one. And you can see the difference in the reactions of the captain, the main one. There we had already the captain walking a little bit further back, and even when he goes back also, he runs into Beto, so we had to, or he was pushed, and that was one of those things that I had seen it in the video, but it was missing in the stake. So this was the block, and as you can see, there are some characters in the back. Well, even though they're more static a little bit, they still had to be in the take, and they make the scene more a little bit heavier. This was the final idea, and I wanted to show you this. This is the final version. Well, this take in the middle of the game is like a very funny situation between the players, and especially the captain. That lack of that impotence, in the sense that he can't go into the field to help the team, because obviously that would be cheating. But well, I wanted to show you as an example the different steps that we're taking to get up to the point of approving the take as a whole. And also I want to show you that, I mean, the style of animation that Juan Campanella is looking for in this movie was, he was looking like something much more natural. He wanted to be much more expressive from the synthesis. I mean, we didn't have to have many different movements and characters moving around all the time. I mean, it didn't look for a cartoony kind of style or classic kind of style in characters. So there was also like a moment where there was a lot of discussion, or big discussion, of how far we can go with not moving the character so much. And even, I don't know if you know Sergio Pablos. Serei Pablos is an animator with an extensive history working for Disney. He's Spanish and excellent animator, artist. And he's in Spain, and he has his animating team there. And some of the scenes from the movie were animated there at his studio. And what was happening was that in the first scenes that we received from them were impeccable. They were very beautiful. I mean, the characters moved really well. The timing, the frames, the pace. But the director was looking for something else. And well, that's when we start. I mean, from our side, we started to investigate and research how far we could go with that lack of animation, or I mean, trying out in scenes whether the characters were expressing what they could express or wanted to express with less movement. And I was really happy with that because when looking at the movie, there's a main difference. I think there's a big difference between the action or the acting actually of the characters, which are very linked to the voices, the original voices, which were Argentinian actors.
So we had an Argentinian accent that was very strong, and then that would inspire us for the animations to come from or in a different way. So I think this is something that is highlighted very much at Metegol. And in many cases it's effective as well, because there typically are situations where people have to react in a certain way or certain characters, and then when you see that that's not expected, then it kind of creates it's something funny, it's something different. So from that standpoint, I loved the way it ended up and how we were looking for that style. I wanted to show you an example as well of an animator that in many cases we had some frames that, aside from having too many characters on scene, they were long. So here we had a scene of about 1 minute, and we considered the reference of the actors, but also the animator was filmed and of course added his part to the acting of the people, and I think it was actually pretty good. This is what was recorded in the references of the actors. What the actors did was act out the scenes, and not in front of a microphone, but they placed their bodies as part of the acting, like it was a whole theater play, and that's how their voices came out very naturally. Very well. So this is how Juan was directing the actors, and here we can see that the voices are stepping over each other, and sometimes they were they had some spontaneity coming out of the script, and then this was actually giving a lot of wealth, it was enriching the voice. So this to us was actually fundamental and very inspiring. Now I'm going to show you the layout of this scene with some pieces of it. This is the same scene with the animated characters now. So this is the frame that I was talking about. It's a 53-second scene. It's the three characters interacting with each other, and there's a species of choreography where Beto moves towards the camera, and then the captain follows behind, and then they focus him again at the same distance. But in that sense, from the references of the actors, they weren't actually copying what they were doing physically, but it was sort of an aid more of as an inspiration to show some of the gestures, some of the body language of the actors that would help us to establish it from that point of view. Now, I'm going to show you what the animator decided to do to show this scene, and in addition, this is Pablo Lorenzo. This is one of the animators with most experience and one of the best in Argentina. And he filmed himself interpreting the three characters, and one at a time, and then he superimposed them, and this is what came out. And this was the reference that he used to animate his own scene, but as you can see, he's not acting the choreography of the Beto's character to come closer to the camera, etc. And so this is exactly how it was. It was sort of a construction of several things. And here's what I'm going to show you. This is the final animation that you're going to see. and that was the scene. So here's the complete sequence. I'm looking because here we have on the same scene very interesting anecdote. What characterized the actor who was playing the crazy guy, in many cases they forgot their script, so then I have to animate sort of a background where the three of them are arguing, it's the same context, and then the crazy character begs respect. He's asking for respect. He said, let's not mix things up. And then in the middle of those two sentences, there's a little bit of a stutter there, some doubt. And then I received that same audio, and then, well, I had to start to animate. It's this block that I'm going to show you now. Apparently there's no sound on that little sketch. So apparently there's no audio here from the scene. And here he says, let's not mix things up, let's not get things wrong. At that point, I get this audio and I begin to animate, and that's the frame that you can see at the end. And the director begins to say, hey, this is a great frame, this is the best one in the whole film. There was not many of those, but I said, well, thank you. I didn't know why. Well, while there was a certain comedy in the body language of El Loco, it didn't seem to me to be that much. She said it was the best scene in the movie. So this was animated a little over 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And 1 year later, we had a conference in the Mar del Plata Film Festival. I was lucky enough to go with Fede, the animation director, and Taparella. And in the middle of the talk, he mentions this case where Uh, it was sort of a happy accident, and what the people needed to do was in that space where this gesture of doubt that he makes, where he goes, let's not mix things up, then that had to be deleted. But in the edition, it wasn't deleted. The audio came in, and that's what the director meant by saying you took advantage of the whole scene, of the entire audio. And I realized that when I was in a situation like this on a table with many people, and I looked at him like this and said, okay, then I began to talk about my surprise, which was, the truth is I was just finding out, I was just becoming aware that I didn't have to animate that part, but or didn't have to have any voice or anything like that. So this was one of those things that happened, and of course it came out right. So I found out even less than a year ago, I think. And maybe when a little over a year had gone by when I realized this happened. So this was a pretty funny anecdote for us. And so what we did a lot in Metegol was to be very much aware of the references, because we had references from everywhere. We had references from the actors. Many of the animators were filming their own references to then place them on the film, and especially many references on football. Our team was not known for being the best football team we had, but still many of us, we didn't know what we were doing with football. So we had to look at many references, many plays. Even for the game, we had the opportunity to have Eduardo Sacheri, who wrote the novel The Secret of Your Eyes, El Secreto de sus Ojos. He was also in the script of Metegol, and he gave this imprint of the football. And before we started the game, then we would get together with him, and he would give us some classes on football directly, on soccer, and for us to be able to portray that and make it as true as possible. So we had a huge job to do from this reference, and it depended a lot on the animator. There were many who were filmed as well. Like there's others like me. Well, I didn't film myself, but I did make some sketches, and there were others that were doing some very using advanced tools to show their repertoire. So we actually, in the department, we had to handle many methods for working on this, and we had several cases. There were cases where the reference of the actors, didn't work, or the actors were sitting down, hearing their lines, working on their lines, and then in the scene they had to be walking around, for instance. So there were cases where the director asked exactly for what the actor was doing at the time. So we had to copy that, and these were few cases actually, but afterwards, I don't know if I'm looking at another case, but we're going to show this. Here in the midfield we have some communication problems, and we were developing a technique. Well, in this case, the animator, what he was doing was to use many small elements of the reference of the actor, of the player, many gestures that he does. He makes these with his mouth. He's telling the girl he likes that he actually has no plan for his life, so he's sort of inventing something that he has with Metegol. So it's a pretty uncomfortable situation for him, and the animator, what he did was to add a lot from himself, and he took some small elements from this, he took what he does with his lips there, and he put it in his final animation. And here what we're going to see is some body language and some gestures and movements with his head and elements that were taken from the reference of the actors. Well, you know, I have this problem in the midfield, and there's communication problems. You know, I'm developing, you know, some techniques, you know, special things. So, wow. Well, as you could see, there were some very small elements there that were incorporated. I don't know, and he passes some saliva, or all these things were taken and rescued from the reference. So always being very critical of what the director wanted. But also, we had other cases. I wanted to show you a little bit. For example, here on my shoulder, this is where I take all the games. Can you believe they were going to give me 10 more players? So here, I'm launching a record here, the decorator. How many people must have heard this? Well, this is a reference. As you can see, the actors are just sitting down, they're just reading their lines or saying them. So what's the problem? That we had a layout, and the people who were walking sideways, that's what they wanted to do there. So this was actually complicated for us to use the reference of the actors. So what was done from animation was to seek the own reference, the same spirit that the players are speaking. So it's sort of giving the actions required by this scene. This is what the animator Ochoa did, one of the other supervisors, and he saw this, and this was what he filmed for the reference of that scene. That's the simplest result, but still everything is achieved through the different references that we take, and we always had to be very thorough in what to choose and what not. So we had many cases where we had to use the reference, or where it didn't work because the actors were just sitting there, or because the director didn't like what they were doing physically. So we had to contribute from the animation, and we had to invent the acting of the character. But those were the ways in which we had to work in the director's department. Since we're also as a part of the studio, and there's several departments, technical issues that need to be considered when working on a scene. And for example, the simulation, and when the scene goes to simulation department, then the scene can be in the conditions to simulate what you have on each of the characters, etc. So I think I'm not forgetting anything, so I will now hand over to Diego Rosner, who's going to tell us a little bit about the other Odyssey, the other journey, which was the production and a little bit of the history. So, thank you. Hey everyone, how are you? This was an odyssey. This was a very daring feat. Uh, this is a project that started about 6 years. This is the time that it took us to develop this movie, this film. It's a project, for those of you who don't know, it is directed by Jose Campanella. Probably he is one of the most successful and well-known directors in Latin America. In Argentina, before Metegol, he had worked on 4 films. 2 of them were nominated to the Oscar. One of them won. Of them was El Hijo de la Novia, the bride's son, and that was the winner of an award. Also, Dr. House in the U.S. And a series that's going to replace Breaking Bad. So this is a guy that's very well connected. He's worked very well in the U.S. as well. He lived in the United States, and he took the decision to come back to Argentina with the good and bad that Argentina has and what Latin America has, to give us some general context. Because Argentina gave him the liberty to create what he wanted to create. So he goes for 3 months, once in a while, directs in the U.S., then comes back to Argentina. I think that combination is one of the things that enabled Metegol as a project to be a success and to exist. And the only reason why it could exist is because Juan Campanella was behind it. He's an impressive guy. He sat down for 3 years on the same table to hear 50 animators and the technical problems that we faced throughout this whole time to work on this film. He works 3 times the amount of that anyone else right beside him works, and he does the production. Normally there's different friction between the directors and producers, but when everything ends, the whole battle ends, you can realize and you can acknowledge that on the other side there was an enormous effort that of a guy that at the same time is working on a theater play and a TV series. So it's a brilliant mind. Metegol started before the rolling of El Secreto de sus Ojos, The Secret of Her Eyes. So we're going back to 2007, more or less. 2006, 2007. Metegol is a co-production between Argentina and Spain. As I mentioned, it had about 5 years duration between development and production, and the highest budget of any film in Latin America in history, $20 million. $20 million sounds delirium, but when you go back to the ground and you sit down and you start building a studio, buying technology, finding a team, and everything that's involved in the production of this scale, you realize that compared to $150 million, which it cost in the U.S., 70 or 80 million of Despicable Me in France, 20 million is still a modest budget. And we felt it because 3 years into it, there was not much more energy to breathe, so it was a pretty fast race. And it involved some 500 people throughout the process, and the art, the inspiration from the beginning to the final rendering. In the plant permanently there was 150 to 180 people working as a team, and I said it was filmed 3 times. There were people from 16 countries, people from India, people from the US, people from France, Italy, Germany, Norway, and many Colombians. I think there was 15 to 20 Colombians. Some came, Rafa's around here, Juan is also there, but many already lived in Buenos Aires, had studied in Buenos Aires, and stayed there to work. So it was an experience for everyone that was impressive. And they distribute in Spain and all South America, Universal. In Argentina, we already created. In Colombia, we're going to launch in a few months. And we did very well.
In Buenos Aires, we had a very big opening weekend, and to think that we are competing against Monsters University, Despicable Me 2, Turbo, and then the Smurfs, I think it was. So there was a huge competition in everything regarding the winter vacations for us. That was a date that we didn't want to miss. So after 3 years of production, we really struggled hard to make it. I want to show you a trailer of the movie. Maybe you can understand a little bit what we're doing, and then I'm going to show you or tell you why I think we as Latin Americans have a very big opportunity as a Latin American set. And I also wanted to share to you the challenges that we had to overcome to get to this point. They were very hard, but it was an advantage because we have gone through a certain path. I mean, it's like a river. I mean, we've gone through it. We need to leverage on the learnings to be able to step forward. So can we dim the lights a little bit, please? You can't think of a future if you're always thinking about Metegol. It's a nightmare. I'm gonna wake up and everything is gonna be okay. The bar, my foosball table. Amadeo. Ta-da! Huh? Check this out. Is it you, Copy? Yeah, of course it's me. 3,724 undefeated matches. Come on, change that face. I mean, I made my life playing foosball, and I don't have anything. We can still turn it around. Let's go look for the kids. Where? I don't know. I know every inch of my foosball table, but outside here, I mean, come on. I challenge to a serious, real foosball soccer game. If Amadeo wins, we get the town back. So this would be made by 11-0. We're all of us hanging there from the post, the goal post. How do you know when there's? How do you call it when you know that there's only one option? You call it passion. What are you doing? I don't know, but everybody does it. Apparently, it gives you luck. They don't realize that what brings us together is a lot more than what drives us apart. This is the worst preseason of my life. Don't let go now, Bordeaux. Brought together by friendship. Brought together by passion. Brought together by a pole. Foosball. Goal! That's not called victory yet. This is just beginning. Well, to tell you the truth, I mean, we opened on July 20th in Buenos Aires, and I think the last stretch to get there was so hard. You still look at the trailer, and after you saw it on the movies and all, when there's people who still haven't seen it, you still get thrilled of looking at the end result after so much time of sacrifice. There's a part where the three protagonists, the foosball players here, they yell passion all together. And I think that in the end, that's the only thing that's missing to be able to carry out a project like this one, because there are so many times where throughout the years when you're doing this, you want to quit and say, hey, to hell with it. I mean, I'm tired. That everybody stay with this animation project, because I mean, I can do anything else. There's lots of hours, lots of effort, lots of dedication. So and that's something you should know. When you dream of a project, there's a part where the project comes together and becomes a reality, and you need to be able to say, okay, this was my dream, I have to do it. So you need to be very convinced of what it is that you're going to do and the effort that you're going to have to put to this project and the things you're going to need to leave aside to make this a reality. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how the presentation is divided. I'd like to tell it to you in three parts. One is the development, the prior part, until the point where they tell you, you know what, here it is, the project has a green light, and let's get moving. We need to start production. The production, it was 3 years from June 2010 to June 2013. What I think was the future, hopefully a future that we all dreamt of, because of course this is all very much dependent from the success that this movie has in all of its time. The development, as I told you, is 2 years. I mean, I put here down June of 2008, but since the original idea came about, it was 2007, about a year before. You had a producer called Gaston Morales. He read a story from Fontana Rosa. Fontana Rosa is an Argentinian writer, very well now known from Rosario. Actually, was a province of Buenos Aires, but with quite an identity. A soccer fan, very passionate. Soccer stories were written by him, and in every story he tells, he conveys a very strong emotion, and he uses soccer as a means to tell a story about people. In the end, of a life story. The story that the story that our movie is based on is 3 pages long, and it talks about a very arrogant soccer player who says, in my time, soccer was very different. I scored 100 goals in a weekend. And when you start reading, you realize that the guy is a foosball player in a small foosball table in a neighborhood store. And that's when we sat down and we said with Gaston around the therapist, Argentinians all go to a therapist, and then we sat down and he said, hey, you know what, dude, I thought of a story. What do you think? Everybody had a different project. We had just finished an animation project that he had just finished, a project that was called City Hunters for Fox, and I had a company that used to do architectural rendering, and I told him it's a good idea. There's something there, and Gaston began to develop that idea, and what I was most interested in is how an idea that you can have, you're reading a story in a bar, and you say, oh, I got a story. When does a story go from being in a bar to becoming a $20 million story? I mean, it involves more than 1,000 people working in a single project, because you have to add to this the distributors, the people from marketing, the producers, the artists. It's like I mean, you sit down in a bar, you ask for a coffee, and 5 years later, after you read a story, there's a huge production. I mean, and there's a very important part there, and that I want to point out. And it's the passion. It's not quitting. It's believing in what you do and what you want. And you can't believe in something that is not well based. You need to hit that idea around to realize that it is the idea. You have 20 ideas a minute, and there's one that was really interesting. I think that Gaston this was the idea, and he thought this could make something. So I think that in this you need to believe in the idea, persevere, and also to succeed sometimes, because or be flexible. Sometimes you think that your idea has to be one way and only the one way, and in the end you end up screwing it up, because when you're flexible, the project, or maybe because you believe that you deserve a lot more than what you're being offered, then you kill your own idea. So it's not about who had the idea. The important thing is for the project to exist. I mean, if you keep a greater or lower percentage, I mean, whether they're the optimal ideas that you would like them to be or not, then that's separate. But the most important thing for the idea not to be killed in a bar is for you to understand what you need to do, what you need to be flexible on, what you need to let go of on the idea. If you believe the idea is going to be your own and in the way that you want it, the most probably thing is that it's going to die in the end. There's a certain point where you need to let go of it. And the other thing that I wanted to tell you about, it took me 5 years as an executive producer to learn this. The animators or the effects or lighting people, maybe it'll take for them less time, but it's 2 years plus 6 months. It's 2.5 years per project. If a person thinks of the useful life, maybe you can have 10, 15, maybe 20 projects that you can work on, considering your life, the span of your life. So my recommendation is pick your projects well, because that's a very important part of your life, and it has to make sense. Whatever you do has to make sense, and you have to believe and be passionate. Otherwise, it doesn't even make sense. And as I tell you, it's a project that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. The most important thing is to believe and enjoy all this process and to pick the proper project. The project was financed in the end. It's a co-production between Argentina and Spain, and it was financed in Spain by Grupo Prisa, the largest multimedia group in Latin America or in Spain. Antena 3 is a very important TV network in Spain, and Argentina was a private investor that's been following Campanella's career and supporting him. He's in oil, but he loves movies, so he's sort of a mentor for the arts, for this kind of arts. So, in order to give you a summary, it had been 2 years since an idea came about in a bar that was built where Gaston thought also that Campanella was the right person to direct that, and that also shows a very particular vision because Campanella hadn't still gotten the Oscar yet. He had been nominated. He was a very renowned director in Argentina, but he wasn't known as the right person to do one of these projects with animation. He hadn't done animation, but also I think that was a very clear vision in picking him up and what he wanted. And just to share an anecdote, a very funny one, I believe it's a funny one. Gaston writes to Campanella. He had worked with him in a TV spot or something before, and he tells him, "I have an idea to tell you about." He was in the U.S. and he says, "I'm coming back to Buenos Aires in 5 months. We can meet in a restaurant in Palermo on the 25th of September of 2009." Okay, he scheduled, Gaston scheduled. 5 months came through, and then they met. The original idea was that Campanella, since he's a very good storyteller, and in general, what is important about this is for the story to convey the emotion, the emotion that the script is going to generate. Campanella writes very well, and he, I believe, reads the essence of a person. He knows what motivates and drives a person. I don't know if you've seen a Campanella movie before, but you can actually feel it there. It's not just a movie that goes by. It's one that seeks to live something more in the person that watches it. Gaston, with all the nerves, he pitches the idea to him on a project based on a three-page story. One says, "I'll go to the bathroom just a second," and he says, "Oh no, I didn't do well." Guy goes to the bathroom. He says, "Thank you, goodbye." Juan comes back from the bathroom, and he says, "Okay, I want to direct, if you don't mind." Gaston opens his eyes wide and he says, "Of course, please." I mean, with Campanella, the only reason why this project came about, not just because it was a good idea, but because Campanella was in there. The project didn't get the green light until Campanella didn't win the Oscar. As soon as he won the Oscar, the next week we opened, lots of doors were open for us. Before getting to all of this, to share the parts of the project, or the process, rather, the investors financed development, a brief development that lasted about 6 months maybe, where Mauro, at that time Mauro was already doing the first drafts, an animation draft, looking for the style, modeling characters. It was 4 people back then, right? 4 people, approximately, in a 50 square meter office. And you're going to see something that, for us, it's horrible when we see it. I want to show it to you so you'll understand where the project began and how it was evolving. And as we realized that we were able to do something better, we continued to give it an effort and develop something more. I'm going to show you an initial trailer, a teaser trailer that we did to show to investors that this was more or less possible. At the time, we were not really convinced that it was possible, and but when you are on it, you're on it, and you move forward. And what we said then, when the character's voice was Francella, there was a horrible female character who was killed in the script. You're going to see something awful that we did 4 years ago, right? 5 years ago. We can dim the lights, please. Where are we? What's this? I don't know. I don't know really. But don't be afraid. Fear is a feeling, but it's not nice as soccer. I'll save you. Thank you, Wayne. Why are you looking at me like that? Well, it's been 20 years that I've been looking at a middle player. Midfield goalie. For those of you who speak English, I tell you this is horrible. For those of you who speak Spanish, I tell you this is horrible. Back then we said, oh, this is wonderful, we did something beautiful, and we look at this after the fact and we say, how could somebody buy into something so awful? But, I mean, those are the things that you start realizing. I mean, as you move forward as part of a production, you realize that you can do more and more and more. And I think that Campanella was also responsible for always pushing us a little bit further. I mean, us producers, that drives us crazy because we have everything in Excel in small little cells, saying this has to last this long, that long, and he says, no, this is going to be longer, we want more quality, and that's it. When now, after it's over, I have to thank him and say, he knew something of it. I'm trying to go faster. We're going to get the Minister of Telecommunications and Technologies and Communications is going to be here. So I'm going to tell you quickly this third part about the challenges of this production. The first and foremost is to do something that hadn't been done yet. There are many studies. Pixar took 10 years to make the first movie. Now it makes more than one movie per year. For us, it was about getting to a warehouse, carpeting it, starting to buy computers. I took the first in my car, wire it down, and start an infrastructure with an equipment and a team that didn't exist. So on that from that sense, it was a huge challenge. It was starting up the whole team. Now, managing to, I mean, there was a question done before. We need to develop our own identity. We couldn't copy what Pixar or DreamWorks does because that's imperfect. That makes it imperfect. They do it perfectly, sorry. And it's impossible for us to do something that perfect with such a trajectory. We had to find our own identity, something that in Latin America we can tell the story in a different way. Something that when somebody sees it, he says, oh, this is kind of weird. It has a specific characteristic, but both in the style of animation that we use, the art that we use, and the story that's being told, it has different, there are differences with the traditional stories, basically. Now, on the other hand, in such a long project, there is something that is very difficult, and it's the anxiety, the coping with anxiety. When you start, you know that the script, the story, is going to take about a year, and it's not going to be a scene lighted until about the second year, at the end of the second year and a half almost. Every morning, you start your day saying, oh my God, when is this going to be over? So you need to start setting short goals and objectives and try to celebrate them and saying, okay, stage 1, done, what's next? It's 18 stages. Okay, let's split them in such a way that you don't go crazy with the process. Let's put this first in, this second, then. Okay, and once it's done, let's celebrate. Okay, we got one done. Let's go to the other 16. And the third thing is that when you do something, and it's something that wasn't done before, when you do something that wasn't done before or hadn't been done before, you get to the conclusion this is the right path. Many times you say, okay, what happens if I spend 6 months doing this, and in the end it doesn't work? There were many decisions throughout the whole production process where you had to break down. You had to do a test, or a stress test actually, and saying, this is going to hold or not, this is going to work or not. We need to accelerate each of the processes to see if this was going to work or not, and to realize what were the failures, and try to realize them as fast as possible. And I think it was painful as a studio because it generates a lot of frustration trying to move forward and everything breaking down. But in the end, I mean, spending your budget after 6 months and saying, you know what, I have 15% of a movie done and I don't have a budget now. So from the production side and resource management part, it was also a very important commitment. Now, let's go faster. Infrastructure. Well, I think it was one of the main challenges. We had to build a studio, get 170 workstations, get the software, wire it down, get the servers, build the whole pipeline going under it, moving the information from one sector to the next, and in record time because you moved forward on a train, and you were putting the rails in front of you as you were moving forward. So the next department that had to come in, everything had to be ready for that department and not waste resources. And we tried to find a lot of commercial agreements with many brands, and it took some time because nobody believed that a project like that would be possible in South America. So the first thing, we went after sponsors. They laughed in our face. and we had to wait for a year to close some agreements that were still in the fringe on whether we could move forward or not. So both Hewlett Packard as well as Intel, Telefonica, Autodesk, Microsoft, they all did very important contributions, believing that this project was possible. As a matter of fact, Autodesk sent us a team of 5 American consultants to help us with the structure of the pipeline. From that side, we're very thankful with the people who believed that this was all possible and helped us. Also, there were many changes on the go. On the go, we decided to change the render engine, switch engines, a more reliable one. The engine was not ready; it was an alpha version, and we had to change switch versions as we were moving forward. So, from that infrastructure perspective, it was all a huge challenge. The creative challenge is that we have a director who's a genius, who's never done animation before, and there are many animation processes that he's not familiarized with. Editing the movie before, I mean, the first thing you do is to edit the movie. I mean, it's completely backwards compared to a movie. So that was the huge challenge was try to surround him with the best talent, with the best experience that could be gotten, so he could feel comfortable browsing and navigating this scenario, or this environment. And this to me is key. And this is where I want to be clear, because this was something very important for me. The only way to build a good project and have a good project is with the best people. Always find people who are better than you. I mean, the key thing and the heart, in every project, an artistic project. I studied economy, and I don't have an artist cell in me. But the most important thing I can tell you is that the person who's going to give life to a project like that is telling stories, feeling, moving the audience, driving in, and leaving a message, you need to find the best artists possible. And in that sense, we made a significant effort in trying to, with the limited resources that we had in Argentina and South America, really, to get the best possible that we had. Because Argentina has a huge creative talent, but there's no critical mass. I think we achieved something huge, and it's to bring together all that talent that was spread around in different studios in Argentina, and we managed to get this flagship project to bring them together. And we have people like Mauro, Alex, people who are here today, all the people who went through the studio, the Colombian guys, Rafa and Juan. I mean, it's the heart. I mean, you have to get that heart together, and it was really hard because we were coming from different places, and they hadn't worked before. They had to generate a culture, and we worked with Big Brother. I mean, it's 900 square meters with 150 guys looking at each other every day. I mean, all of us guys even. So it was really horrible. What we did, because as I said, there's so much talent in South America, but there are many times where we're missing good methods. How do you structure a pipeline? How do you structure the folders? How do you should do the rigging so this will work later in a production? How do you do each of the stages? We tried to bring foreign team heads that have gone through 2, 3, 4 Class A movies, and I think it was a good decision. What it did generate was a cultural clash. I mean, in South America, we tend to tie with string some things which outside are made perfectly. So I think that was a very high complication, or very large complication. I'm going to go faster here. The administration of resource administration is something that I told you about. You need to go on feeling the project. When should you open up and say this is the time to invest, and when the conditions are given, and when to sustain? When should you say we're going to expand the team and put 30 more people, 40 more people? All processes are approved, all things are clear, let's go forward. And that, from the production and financial perspective, is a hit. I mean, it's something that you feel in your belly, and you say, okay, this is the time to start. Argentina, and I think South America also, but above all Argentina, which is a very hard country, it has a very complicated macroeconomical environment that's changing through the project. I mean, that's also a very important thing. I mean, trying to manage your resources with a variable exchange rate, and that was a very important point. I mean, the project that we ended up having was not the one that we started with. It ended up being 50 times larger. Sorry, I'm going to show you a brief clip, so you'll see. Oh, they make him off.
se metió Amadeo?
Where is Amadeo? Look. Wait. Left. Right. The other right. Oh yeah, my love. Let go of him! Let go of him! Let go of him! I'm not doing anything.
Ven que es mucha gente. Esa que veían ahí
There
es
was a
gracias.
lot of people. Those who you saw there, I mean, thank you. The people you saw there is the London Philharmonic Orchestra recording the music for this movie. I mean, it's so much people, so many people involved in such a process. I mean, I'm going to try to close this by telling you about what I believe is an opportunity. It's 5 or 10 years that we have to go. And a very clear example that we have of Latin American citizens. We're a country like New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand is at the end of a world, to say the least, just like Argentina is, or Colombia's a little bit in the middle, so you're better positioned. But there's an example that's quite clear. Peter Jackson did The Lord of the Rings and came back to New Zealand to do whatever he wanted. In 10 years, he transformed a small country. I mean, the next territory, the closest territory is like 1,000 kilometers away, which is Australia. And Spielberg is now filming Tintin in New Zealand. I mean, by doing things right, thinking that you can do the things you want to do, getting the talent, providing security, there's many tools that you can get in order to make this happen. Latin America is a 600 million people market. It's enough for any project to be successful. I mean, we have talent, innovation, ideas. We have something that's very important, and it's that we're not India or China. I mean, we give added value. We build quality products. I'm not saying China or India don't, but usually studios are cheaper than other things, and that's why they're gotten there. I think South America, starting with Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, as the spinal cord for Latin America, and then you add the other countries, Chile and Uruguay. I think we're a talented continent. We have an identity. There's one thing that is exporting added value. You buy machines and you export talent and magic, and that's something that governments need to understand, need to support. They need to give us a hand in managing to build an industry which are now isolated projects. When you give it your all and your effort, and we deserve to get things easier done in the future for us.
I think among all these countries we should achieve production agreements, which is easier than exchanging talents, and let's achieve a joint investment so that any country could say, we're going to start this connectivity, we're going to put 2,000 nodes in, and then we could do half of it in Asia, half of it in Spain, and or a third, and then another third in Argentina. So I think we have that possibility, and we can make it possible in Latin America. We're working on a scholarship program in Argentina. They are funded by sponsors and by the Film Institute, where Mauro is one of the precursors. There's a master's degree in animation, and the first course of 120 students will graduate soon, and we plan to extend this to thousands, so we could achieve that critical mass of talent that we need. We need your support in the three sectors: government, private, and financial. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but this is what we need to talk to each of the areas, but I think we need everyone's help. And we need training, we need resources for all of our lives to be easier, and to finish a project without gray hair or even with hair. And this did not happen to me. Now, there's a note that was on BBC World. I wanted to extend this. It's talking about Argentinian experience, but it refers to Latin America. We have to take this experience, what we did in this project, and use it as a spearhead for the development of other projects in the future. And to finish, there's one thing that's in English, it's called ignorance bless. So if any of us knew what this project was going to develop into, of course we wouldn't get into a project like this. You have to have 70% certainty, but not be totally unaware. So 30% has to be the doubt whether the project is going to work or not. So these are things that at the end of the project are progressing, and they fall in place like the way they should. So I highlight this. It's talent what makes a project good, the artist, and this distinguishes a normal project from a good project. And the only thing that you have to emphasize on is the technological infrastructure. And all we need after that is talented people, which we have a lot of effort, support, and a lot of passion for what you do. I want to leave you with Calle 13. You know them. They made the song for the film, and you'll probably hear this. And with this, I'm going to close.
Los deseos me vieron, me vieron crecer, el océano me vio navegar, las estrellas me vieron cruzar, las estrellas me vieron llegar, las estrellas me vieron perder, las estrellas me vieron ganar, las estrellas me vieron correr, las estrellas me vieron volar, las estrellas me vieron perder, las estrellas me vieron ganar.
I wanted to thank all the people from Colombia for the opportunity of being here. And I hope you enjoyed the movie. You can ask Hernando or any of the guys. There's a page for the movie.